But speaking of other stuff, I guess we'll transition into the other topics.
Yeah, so there is a new update on the Apple and Epic lawsuit situation. Um, so funny enough, Apple is now counter-suing Epic, and Apple is the one seeking damages from Epic now.
Dude,
um,
it's so weird. It's like just crazy, like to see these companies fighting each other. It's kind of fun. It's
yeah,
entertaining for the
so
tech.
essentially what happened, so Epic lost their bid to essentially be allowed to be on the App Store in violation of the rules. And so they're now suing again, stating that now they've actually faced damages by not being on the App Store in violation of their rules because they're losing sales by not being on the App Store, which makes sense, but they're only not on the App Store because they're violating the rules. The judge had already told them before that if they were successful in their lawsuit against Apple as far as like suing about the rules, then they could go for damages based on the amount of money that they lost paying the App Store fees, should the App Store fees be deemed to be too high or invalid. Um, and so Epic doesn't really have that much of a leg to stand on as far as damages, because essentially they have a path to be on the App Store and they have a path to get their money back should they be deemed successful in their lawsuit. But what Apple is doing now is they are suing, stating that Epic violated its contract with Apple, because you do sign an agreement to be on the App Store, by essentially setting up their own payment method, and that even though they're not on the App Store now, by still running that payment method through or on iPhones, because they got onto people's phones through the App Store, they are
Mm-hmm.
essentially violating that user agreement still, even though they're not allowed on the App Store at the moment. And so Apple is suing for restitution for the money that Fortnite is making through its own payment system, because it is only using its own payment system in violation of the contract.
It's I don't have a ton to add, but I just find it entertaining. It's
Yeah,
just fun to see
it's
how it plays
wild.
out. Like the further this goes, the more we'll report on it, and I'm sure there'll actually be longer segments about this as things start to settle. But um, for the time being, it's just kind of fun to watch two giant companies punch each other in the face over and over.
Yeah, you're looking at a multi-billion-dollar company suing a multi-trillion-dollar company because the multi-billion-dollar company wasn't making enough hundreds of millions from iOS.
it's it's an interesting point. I don't know, and I don't know. It's just like I feel I have this mixed bag about Epic in regards to this, because I feel like there's been a lot of up and down where like there have been times where I'm like, oh yeah, I can see Epic's trying to help game developers, and then there are other times like Epic wants more money. It's been like it seems like every week there's a change in the story that makes me feel different
Yeah,
about the reason behind Epic doing it.
because it's like Epic did request that they be allowed exemption from the App Store rules.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now,
They
whether or not
did.
that was just prep for the lawsuit or what, I don't know, but
But if you're going to sue, the best argument would be that you wanted the rules to be fair for everyone and be better. If you're
yeah,
trying to sue to get them to have to change their rules, the last thing that you want is for it to look like you were just wanting it
for
so that
money.
you could make more money.
It makes me wonder though if they were maybe hoping that Apple would do it and they were going to use that as ammunition. I don't know.
My assumption is that they were hoping that Apple would just cave to avoid the lawsuit and that Epic would then make more money.
Maybe, but I don't know. It seems like one CEO
Because,
held a
like,
gun to the other CEO's head, and then they're like, "Nah, you don't do that."
yeah, it's
I
just
don't know.
like,
It's
because, like,
funny.
the end goal they claim is their own app store. And as you and I have talked about multiple times, including on this show, if they really wanted their own app store, they would do it on Android, where some Android users are already more used to another app store and would
Yeah.
be more likely to download it.
Well,
And
which
the
they
fact that
have, but it's like it hasn't been successful and doesn't have very many games on it.
it has one other game, it's not really an app store.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, they need to push more on that, and then they can use that as an argument in court.
Yeah.
So it's a weird position. We'll see what direction this goes. We'll keep monitoring this story, but um, I don't know.
You know what
It's
else requires monitoring?
Western
Hard drive
Digital
rotation speeds.
or that. Yeah. Well, I think Western Digital themselves should get a little monitoring, but yes.
So for
Oh
those that don't
man.
know what we're talking about, um, Western Digital got caught again, but this time what they got caught on is lying about the RPMs of their drives.
They have a
Yeah,
history of this crap too. It makes me so mad.
yeah. So at first glance, some people might actually see this as a good thing because what is happening is that their 5400 RPM class drives are actually running at 7200 RPMs in a lot of cases. Um, there's a big concern though, because for one, Western Digital's 5400 RPM class drives have for a while now been listed with a higher power consumption than pretty much every other company's.
5400s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's like that was very confusing and like concerning for some people. And now we know why. It's because they're literally running faster, and therefore that's why they're consuming more power. Um, But then it's also like you run into issues where if you're building like a NAS, you're generally, especially like the type of people that go onto like data hoarder and build like really, really complex stuff. Um,
Me
they
right here.
generally
Me right here.
want to
Raising my
know
hand.
exactly what hardware they're putting in their system.
It's
They generally are
important.
very thoughtful about that stuff.
You have no
Everything
idea how much
from
time I've put into researching drives and stuff to add to my setup.
yeah,
It's
everything from power consumption to reliability to sound, all this stuff is
yeah.
affected by your drive speed.
Well, and vibration can damage stuff. And like if you're putting, you don't necessarily want to pair a whole bunch of drives at different RPMs in the same chassis. Like you
Yeah.
want things to match up in a lot of cases. It depends on the design of the chassis, but it's confusing to me because why? What was the point? I can't.
My assumption is that similar to how Tesla manufactures less products to make it cheaper to manufacture, Western Digital just got into that mindset of let's just make less things and we'll just undersell it. We're technically false advertising, but like we're not selling someone something that is lower spec than they're expecting.
Yeah.
That's my assumption as to the thought process that led to this. And that might have been fine for something like WD Blue drives, like normal consumer
Mm-hmm.
drives. It probably would have never been found. Um,
Well,
but this
it's
is
like the easy
happening
stores.
on
The easy
Reds.
stores sometimes have those like white label drives that are completely different. They're refurbs even and stuff sometimes. Then that's okay. But when it's like you said, when it's NAS specific, this is a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, like WD Reds are NAS drives. And so you're buying like and this is happening on like 8 terabyte and aboves. So you're buying an 8 terabyte NAS drive expecting it to be a specific thing, and it's not that thing.
And I don't understand the history here. Like I'm not gonna buy WD. I mean, I haven't for a while, but this emphasizes that I don't want to buy WD drives anymore because like we can't trust what they say about the specs of their stuff. The
Yeah.
50 with the pile of issues that we've had recently, it's like, oh, you could potentially buy an 8 terabyte drive. I mean, I'm saying in theory because we don't know because Western Digital false advertises that is a 5400 RPM labeled drive that's for a NAS use, but it's actually a 7200 RPM shingled magnetic recording archival drive that automatically bricks itself after a certain period of time because there was a time in history where WD had drives that bricked themselves after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not even just a relatively like short-term thing. Sorry, my chair is like collapsing. It's not even like a relatively short-term thing. It's like they've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And it's
And the
weird.
drives are lying via smart. Like they are reported the firmware is reporting 5400 RPMs via the smart interface.
And that's another problem too is like so one of the things I do is for a near petabyte NAS, I monitor the smart data for all those drives manually by hand. I go through the smart data each month. And like one of the things that you'll come across when doing so is some data points on certain drives are just random jarbled characters and they don't actually mean anything. WD could have done that, but they didn't. You know, like
Yeah.
they could have reported the RPM as some garbled thing of numbers or vendor specific stat, but they didn't. They just listed it. They lied.
Yeah.
Why is my chair?
And
My chair's literally like collapsing itself. What?
oh, nice.
That made no sense.
Yeah. So how this got caught was really interesting too. So one Redditor had like reported that they thought that something weird was going on. Or no, sorry, not a Redditor. At first it was a member of hardwaredeluxe.de
Okay.
who had began investigating this more than a year ago. And then another Redditor recently, in order to try and help prove or disprove the findings that this person that was investigating had initially found, did a audio analysis where they placed a sample of the drive on an empty cardboard box with a Blue Yeti mic held directly above it, and then powered the drive on and used a spectral analysis of the recorded audio to find out that it was running like its baseline frequency was 120 hertz, which times 60 seconds is 7,200 RPM.
Oh, that's awesome that they did that. That's actually not even that hard. It's just clever thinking.
No, there's Android apps that'll let you do spectral analysis.
Yeah, that's just clever thinking, but like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
See, so WD, have you not learned your lesson yet that people that are fans of data storage are also they're nerds of hard drives. Do you not understand what that means? Do you not understand that being a nerd of storage is like the nerd of the nerd, and you need to understand that we're gonna catch you when you do crap like this.
Yeah, and I want to read to you WD's response and see what you say. So here's their response. For select products, Western Digital has published an RPM speed with a class or performance class for numerous years, rather than publishing specific spindle speeds. We also fine-tuned hard drive platforms and the related HDD characteristics to create several different variations of such platforms to meet market or application needs. By doing so, we are able to leverage our economies of scale and pass along those savings to our consumers. As with every Western Digital product, our product details, which includes power, acoustics, and performance data transfer rate, are tested to meet the specifications provided on the product's datasheet and marketing collateral.
What?
So essentially what they're saying is what I said of they're like making one product en masse. Like that's where they were talking about economies of scale. Is that they're making one
right?
product
No, I get that
spread
part.
it out.
Yeah, but
and then they're lying about the spindle speed, but that they're accurate on the noise level and power, so it's fine.
No, it's
just
not.
Don't lie about it.
The vibration is another factor, and again, just don't lie about it. Sorry, but a 7200 and 5400. What do you mean 5400 class? There are 5400 RPM hard drives that only write at 5 megabytes a second. What do you mean 5400 RPM class? The RPM has never been, well, okay, to general consumers that don't get it, it has been a mark of performance, but it's never really been exactly performance. RPM means lower seek latency. RPM usually means higher performance because you can do more to the platter quicker, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. You have things like platter density and, obviously caching and stuff that play into that. And so, like, people look at the performance numbers for the performance numbers of the drive, but they're going to look at the RPM to understand things like noise, vibration, etc. And you can't just say noise, oh, well, it's 5400 RPM class, and we list our noise levels accurately, except that I don't know if I even trust that anymore. But, you know, you also are like you're lying, so I can't trust anything you say. But also saying like, oh, well, it's only this many dB or dBA of noise. It's like, well, what frequency is that? Because that might matter to somebody. Some people are really sensitive to certain frequencies, so that could even be an issue along with a lot of other things. But like there could potentially just be an issue of people wanting a drive that, hums at a certain frequency, right? And so it's ridiculous to think that you're lying about this and there's no benefit from it. And by calling it a 5400 RPM class, are you trying to imply that it's slower? And if so, why?
Yeah.
Like, I
Um,
don't understand.
and then the other thing is, going back to the speed situation, like if you can't trust, like if they're just saying class, then theoretically at any point they could do the same thing. They could have the same drive as long as it makes the same noise and consumes the same amount of power. They could drop an actual 5400 RPM one. And because they're just doing noise level and like power consumption, if they release, let's say, like a somehow like slightly faster than normal 5400 RPM drive that has that same noise level, but it's running at 5400 RPM, and you buy it thinking, oh, this will work in a RAID configuration or something, and then you
Yeah.
have a 5400 and a 7200 RPM in your RAID configuration, that could probably not end too well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, then you're also gonna end up with different performance levels and stuff like that. So you don't want to do that. And depending on and like I'm part of the data hoarder community, but I don't have unlimited money, so I don't have a rack of 80 hard drives. But there are people that do, and the vibration can start to become a real concern when you go beyond one or potentially two chassis, and even in some cases one chassis of a lot of drives. Vibration can start to be a real concern for that. And vibration, you don't know what speeds these are spinning. That can affect that drastically.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is just ridiculous.
I like the analogy that Ars Technica used at the end of their article. They said, this doesn't strike us as much different than a window sticker on a V6 sedan, which declares it to be a 4-cylinder class with no indication of what's actually under the hood.
Yeah. That's perfect. And I just can't figure out, to me, like, why they would do that. I don't get it.
Yeah, just say it's a 7200 RPM drive.
It's not hard, WD. Like it's not hard to just not lie about your product, especially
Yeah.
when it doesn't actually affect like the product. It's literally just there's no positive to this that I can see.
Yeah, so you're looking at it's happening on it was tested and confirmed on 2 of the Element drives, the MyBook, 2 of the Red Plus drives, and 1 of the old Red drives.
So they're just doing it all over the place,
Yes.
and they've been doing it for a while, apparently.
Yes.
Why? Oh my! It's just like the shingle magnetic recording thing. SMR drives are extraordinarily useful for a lot of things. Why lie about it? Why brand something as a NAS drive? And like, this isn't as bad as that. That whole thing, the SMR thing, which we have another podcast about that, but the SMR thing was horrible because people were losing their data like big time because of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is unlikely to cause that because if you have a drive failure, you replace it. It was the rebuild time with these SMR drives that could take an insane amount of time. But it's just, to me, in my head, I don't understand the reason for this.
Yeah, and it's like it makes you wonder what the speed the 7200 RPM class drives are running at.
Right. What's that
Because
mean?
the 7200 RPM class WD Red Pros do have a max sequential transfer rate that is higher than the 5400 RPM class ones.
Yeah.
And so is there something else that's inferior on the 5400 class, or is the 7200 class running above 7200, which would defeat the economies of scale purpose? And if so, if it is that there's something else different, then what's different on it besides the RPMs? That
Yeah.
seems important to know if you're building something out.
It matters a lot, and these NAS drives are used, in a lot of different situations. So to me, I just can't figure out the reason for it. It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why they would do that. But before we move on to the tiny news, I do have one topic that I actually wanted to add to this. So, breaking news, like this literally just happened. Microsoft's patches today were pushed out. It was Patch Tuesday, and somebody has done some compiling of it. And what was interesting is 129 vulnerabilities were fixed, which marks a 7-month streak of more than 100 vulnerabilities fixed. I gotta say, it sounds like they're stepping up their game when it comes to patching, which has been a big issue with Windows. Is it's like just face it. I mean, Windows is a huge attack vector. Windows isn't, but also is not as secure. as FreeBSD and Linux. Finding these issues and patching them quickly is really, really, really important. And it seems like Microsoft's been taking that more seriously so far in 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that. There's nothing particularly major that I can see in here. There were some things that got a critical severity rating, like you should go patch it. But so far, I only read a little bit of it, but so far it doesn't sound like there's anything that's like the end of the world kind of stuff. There's some stuff like SharePoint, remote code execution, but a lot of these ones here are really difficult to execute, but they are like a bad thing if somebody can manage it. So, figured I'd mention that there. Go patch your Windows, protect your bits. So, yep. And then at this
Protect
point,
your bits.
protect your WordTech your bits.
Yes, WordTech your bits.
So now we'll jump into
Tiny news.
So Crisis Remastered has a maximum graphics setting labeled as "Can it run Crisis?" That is the label. I appreciate that. Just that little sprinkle of meme in that. So I'm really excited for it. Just thought I'd throw that in here. And then you had a couple of interesting topics in the tiny news section as well.
Yes, so Google is rolling out a new feature. This is not a part of Android 11. This is just an update to the Google Phone app for Android. But they are now doing a verified call system. So just like they've had like verified text message senders for a while now, when you're getting text messages from like businesses and stuff, they're now doing verified calls from businesses. And what's really cool about this is that they are actually giving tools to businesses so that not just are the calls verified, but they can actually present a reason for the call. So the example that Google uses is, let's say you make a transaction that your bank wants to call to validate. Well, you can get a call from your bank, and it will not just say the name of the bank, but it will show like an official image, and it will say that it's verified, and it will present the reason that they're calling.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool feature. I like it. That's something that Apple doesn't really have an equivalent to right now either. So, right? I'm not wrong about that, right? Yeah, they just don't. Yeah, nothing like it. So, I appreciate it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, oh no, not last thing. There's one other thing after this actually that I just found. But
breaking news while we do the podcast.
Yeah, the next topic. So GM has acquired a stake in the electric truck maker Nikola. So they have acquired an 11% stake in the company, and they will apparently be assisting Nikola in producing both battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Yeah. So GM is like, oh, we oopsied. Like you don't see Ford doing this. Ford has electric vehicles because Ford started to develop them a long time ago when Tesla was like, hey, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And now the companies that aren't are gonna have to acquire small companies and stuff like that to do it. It's actually kind of it's funny to me, and I know that's what you were mentioning too, where it's just like, oh, they're literally too big to fail, so they just kind of sit stagnant, and it's just funny because GM was also the one that needed bailouts. Ford got through a lot of stuff without bailouts. I mean, they've had bailouts, but they got through a lot of stuff without it. So, and now Ford is coming out, is it this year or next year? They're coming out with the Mach-E, the Mustang Mach-E, which shouldn't have Mustang branding, but other than that, actually looks really good. But then GM just has like nothing. I mean, the Chevy Volt and Bolt, they're not very good. I mean, the Volt's interesting, but it's not exciting.
Yeah.
So.
And then for the last thing, this actually ties into the first thing we talked about, which was the Xbox. There was a leak that just came out a little while ago about a potential SSD expansion card for the Xbox. keep in mind,
Oh.
the Xbox Series drives aren't even high enough to saturate PCIe 4. They're like 2 point something gigabytes. So they are, or at least can be, PCIe 3.
Okay.
1 terabyte. If this leak is true, Microsoft really is fucking up. $220. I really hope it's not true. That is more expensive than PCIe 4 5 gigabyte a second NVMe SSDs.
Wait, did you say 220?
Yes, $220 for a 1 terabyte SSD.
Daniel, if you do math, like not including the cost of Game Pass, if you're doing the $25 a month thing to get the Series S, right? So you take out the half of that cost for Game Pass, the $300.
Yes. Yeah.
This is only $20 cheaper than the console.
No. Oh, well, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm
I
saying
get what
if
you're
you
saying, yeah.
factor it that way, if you pull the Game Pass out of it, so it's $300 and then you take the 60 off from that.
Yeah. But no, like,
Oh my gosh.
so like if you bought, let's assume that 500 gigabyte is a little under half, not exactly half, but let's assume it's only $100.
Yeah.
That means you're looking at, for a 1 terabyte total amount of storage, Xbox Series S, thanks to the expansion, you'd be looking at $400. If Sony can do an 825 gig diskless PS4 or PS5 full spec, not down spec like the Series S, for $400, that changes. The
That
storage
changes
pricing
a lot.
does change a lot. The
Yeah.
storage pricing needs to be out there before
Before people make decisions here.
Yeah, I
There's
really
a lot of
hope it's a
consumers that are
placeholder.
gonna not understand, that 500 gigs is not a lot. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's gonna be general people that are buying, children, parents, that kind of thing. Not necessarily the general gamer, because gamers complain about games being too big, like normal gamers. But the people buying it for other people aren't gonna necessarily understand that. Oh, it's only good for a couple of games, and you have to spend another, $200 something to
Yeah.
get more.
And like it should be noted that right now there aren't any I don't think there are any NVMe PCIe 4 SSDs that are faster than the PS5 drive.
No, not that consumers can buy, but yeah.
But there will be later this year, and we already have the 5 gigabyte a second, which is pretty close to the PS5's drive. We already have those PCI 4 drives for $190. And so if we assume Corsair drops one that's half or 1 gigabyte a second faster for $30, $40 more, you're now looking at the same price, maybe slightly more than Xbox's external drives. And that's first year of non-proprietary drives, so they will drop in price, and these drives are way faster.
Yeah, no, it's a significant improvement. I think that's the important note there, is that that speed improvement is going to make them
twice as fast.
Yeah, like they're going to be fast enough, and IOPS and other measurements, they're not going to be, they're twice as fast on sequentials, but even so, with the way the controller works and stuff in the PS5, you're in theory still going to get that near instant boot, instant load, etc., which you probably won't have the same thing. You might still have instant resume, but you're not going to have as good of loading times and stuff on games that do need loading, which this will kind of create on the Xbox. Like, you'll kind of have, like, games on those SSDs may actually have to have loading screens.
No, it shouldn't be. That's the point of doing it proprietary, is it's essentially just
maybe so, but
PCI
it's
lanes
slow.
to the drive.
But I guess
but it's just as slow as the internal drive.
Right, that's true.
The Xbox's internal drive is nowhere
not
near
very fast. Yeah, okay.
It's like a pretty par for the course NVMe drive. It's nothing special.
Nothing special, yeah. Which again emphasizes that it's basically just a PC in a box with a custom OS.
Yeah, the only thing special is how it routes the data to the GPU's RAM.
Right, that's right. Yeah,
That is
yeah.
the special thing, is
Which
that it can load assets faster, which the
yeah,
PlayStation can also do.
which RTX IO is probably going to come kind of close to that, but still be far away
And
from PlayStation.
no doubt that whatever RDNA2, their implementation of it will come pretty
Yeah,
close to the consoles, because especially like there's going to be some things that AMD just isn't going to try and compete on, or can't compete on, because they're not going to build IO controllers and extremely advanced decompression units into
yeah,
their graphics cards. But the actual pipeline for how they handle routing the data is something that, from everything that we know of, Sony has worked with AMD on,
yeah.
to integrate into RDNA2. And some of the stuff is going to be that Sony has done is apparently like not even RDNA2 ready, but coming in eventually in RDNA3.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I feel like this console generation, which I mean, the last generation kind of already did this, is it seems like Xbox is moving more and more in the direction of a budget-oriented PC for multiplayer games,
yeah,
and Sony is
whereas
more like the real console, and then Nintendo as well.
yeah, apparently Sony is even internally, like, they are trying to avoid, although they are prepping if they feel the need to do it, but they are trying to avoid releasing a mid-gen console. Like, they're trying to avoid doing like a PS5 Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And instead what they wanted to do, and that's why we're seeing, them go so ham on like storage, for example, where they think that that is something that they can get a lot more longevity from.
Well, and
Um,
it's a interesting quality of life improvement that doesn't necessarily cost as much as more graphics horsepower,
yeah.
and it's a long-lasting
Um,
quality of life improvement.
yeah. And so like it sounds like what they're trying to do is set up, like, they were looking at just what do we expect for the next 5 or 6 years of games before we would potentially start a new generation. And they want to like shorten the generations like a year or two, but then get rid of that mid console or mid gen console that they did this year or this gen.
I wonder if we'll start seeing launches from the two companies that are at very separate times then. We
Yeah,
might,
I
yeah.
I kind of hope so.
I kind of like though that the consoles are divulging in some ways, right? You've got like a Xbox is kind of like a cheap PC. It's great for multiplayer games, great for that because it's crossplay with a lot of stuff. And you've got some really cheap options there too. You've got Nintendo that's doing something that's more portable and kind of sticking with their more unique style. And then you've got PlayStation who's trying to heavily optimize it so you get not necessarily the cheapest but the best value with a lot of good single player games and stuff like that. It's interesting to see the differences.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's like I feel like they're now starting to really have to compete when it comes to like how they're doing things,
Mm-hmm.
because before what happened was like most people would buy systems based on where they were going to be able to play games with their friends. And
Yeah.
so if most of your friends bought Call of Duty on Xbox, you were probably going to buy an Xbox. If most of your friends bought Call of Duty on a PlayStation, you were probably going to buy a PlayStation. Well, now that there's cross-platform play, you're going to go where you think you're going to get the best experience for how you game, and then you can still play with your friends
That's
no
also
matter
a good
where they
point.
are.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And so people that do tend to play more story games and stuff, it just makes more sense to just go in the direction of PlayStation if you care about those titles. If you're an online only person, then Xbox is probably kind of the way to go, is what it's looking like. But
I mean, not necessarily, because like unless you really want to play like Halo multiplayer, like if you can play all the third-party multiplayer games on PlayStation.
yeah, but there are a lot more games that are cross-platform between Xbox and PC for the time being. That was
I mean,
part of
that's
what I
kind
was
of
getting
already
at.
dying
But
down. Most big games are now just cross-platform in general.
yeah, I mean I mean COD and stuff is yeah Fortnite, but I don't know.
It's I think that within 2 years, if a game is not cross platform, people will be seriously questioning it. I think that
No,
will be
I
the
agree with
norm.
that statement. I do. But if we're talking about
In
buying
fact, I
these,
even think that
tomorrow,
the yeah, but like
but
what games are people going to be playing tomorrow?
yeah, yeah,
Call of Duty, Fortnite, Apex.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
Well, I think that concludes everything. The last important thing to add here is PCMR. Thank you for watching,
no, just buy
and
everything.
thank you everybody for watching or listening. We appreciate it, and seems like we've actually been getting pretty good viewership. But for those that make it all the way to the end here, leave a comment down below and tell me your favorite kind of cookie dough.
Why?
I don't know why. I just want to see if
You
somebody
should
gets
ask
to
them
the
something
end.
relevant to the topics.
Relevant to the topics. What's your
You're bad at this.
I'm really bad at this. I don't know what to say.
How do you
what's your
define
favorite
RPM class?
hey, I mean that's an option. Or what's your favorite SSD or something? I don't know.
What I like the how do you define RPM class?
Yeah, how do you guys define RPM?
Because we don't know how
like
Western
what's that
Digital does
mean?
it. Yeah.
It's like oh this is here. You see Claptrap's coloring here, right? This I call this red class. That's what this is. This is red class color. It's not you know, I mean it's not yellow. It's red class.
Yeah. Just
Anyway,
like get, like think about it, take some time, meditate on it, and just like, what does RPM class mean to you?
yeah, I want to know how important it is to you, you know. Does it touch your soul in some way or another? I don't know. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and of course we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.